which was exactly 7 minutes later than she intended and exactly 7 minutes too late for a man like Cassio Pisano. She stood outside the revolving doors, hair already unraveling from the bun she'd twisted it into, clutching a folder so tightly the edges had begun to curl. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. It sounded like a countdown. She muttered to herself, which she always did when she was nervous, so essentially always. "Okay, Emma, you've got this. It's just a job interview. Just a terrifying job interview in the tallest building you've ever seen with a man who fires people for breathing wrong. Totally fine. Totally normal." The security guard glanced at her with a mixture of sympathy and amusement. He'd seen this before, hopeful applicants entering the ice palace with bright eyes, only to flee a few hours later looking like they'd escaped a war zone. Still, he scanned her through and pointed toward the private elevators. The ride to the 60th floor felt like ascending into a corporate afterlife. The air grew colder, quieter. Even the elevator music sounded tense. When the doors glided open, Emma stepped into a world of marble, chrome, and silence so sharp it could cut skin. Every surface gleamed. Every line was straight. Every plant looked like it had been threatened into growing symmetrically. Employees moved like ghosts, steps soft, voices softer. No one made eye contact. No one breathed too loudly. Emma swallowed. "Ice Palace," she whispered. "Yep, accurate, very accurate." At the far end of the floor, framed by floor-to-ceiling glass, was the office. His office. The office of the man every employee referred to never aloud as the Reaper. Cassio Pisano, CEO of Pisano Global. Harvard MBA. International business strategist. Sicilian Mafia bloodline. A man whose standards were so impossibly high, YouTube motivational speakers cried, just thinking about them. Emma took a shaky step toward the reception desk. Claire, the assistant to the assistant who had quit yesterday, looked up. She had the exhausted expression of someone who had seen too much, aged too quickly, and accepted her fate. "You're the candidate?" Claire asked with no enthusiasm whatsoever. Probably." Claire blinked. "Follow me, and whatever happens, don't touch anything." Solid advice. Emma hoped she could follow it. Claire opened the door to Cassio Pisano's office. Emma stepped inside and immediately forgot how to function. The room was a museum. Polished marble floors reflected the skyline. A massive obsidian desk looked like it weighed more than her entire existence. Artifacts glimmered in glass cases, bronze, silver, priceless. Carefully arranged books lined the shelves, their spines uncreased. Every item was perfectly placed, purposeful, controlled. And standing before the window, back turned, was the man himself. Cassio Pisano radiated cold authority. Tall, sharp Italian features, dark hair immaculately styled, shoulders squared, hands folded behind him like a commander surveying a kingdom. He turned, and his gaze struck her like a winter wind, silent, assessing, merciless. "Miss Hanford," he said, "you're late." Emma opened her mouth. Words did not come out. Instead, panic did. She gestured wildly, her elbow catching the strap of her bag, which swung forward and smacked directly into a glass display pedestal. The pedestal wobbled. Emma lunged for it. Her foot caught on literally nothing. She collided with the pedestal, knocking it sideways, and the antique object atop it, a delicate Venetian inkwell, toppled in slow, excruciating motion. It hit the floor. Shattered. Emma froze. The entire building seemed to stop breathing. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no, this is fine, maybe it can be glued. Or taped. Or, magically put back together by." Claire made a sound, like a dying animal. Cassio did not move. He simply stared at the shards of the inkwell, then at Emma, then back at the shards. This was it. Emma Hanford's shortest job interview ever. First place up to now had been 9 minutes at a law firm she accidentally insulted. This was going to beat that record by a landslide. She waited for the firing, the yelling, the security escort. But none came. Instead, Cassio stepped closer, not furious, not shouting, just watching her with unsettling curiosity. "Miss Hanford," he said quietly, "tell me, how did you manage to break something without even crossing the room?" I don't know," she whispered. "It's a talent, a curse, a cursed talent." And then something impossible happened. Something no one in that building would have believed without seeing it. Cassio's mouth twitched. Not a smile. Not yet. But something near it. "Interesting," he murmured. Emma blinked. Interesting. She had just committed artifact homicide. Why wasn't he firing her? Why did he look intrigued? What exactly had he seen in her chaos? She didn't know the answer yet. But it was the first crack in the Reaper's armor. And it was only the beginning. Emma Hanford did not sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the shattered pieces of the Venetian inkwell exploding across Cassio Pisano's pristine floor. By morning, she had convinced herself the entire thing had been a hallucination brought on by excessive caffeine and impending poverty. But when she stepped off the elevator on the 60th floor, every employee turned their head toward her with a look that could only be described as pity mixed with morbid curiosity. They had all heard. Of course they had. The Ice Palace had no secrets, only whispers that traveled faster than Wi-Fi. Claire met her at the desk and studied her face like she was examining a rare insect. "You came back," was the first thing she said. Emma nodded because words seemed too risky. Claire sighed deeply in a way that suggested she had already prepared condolences. "He is in a mood today," she warned. "I would personally flee the country, but so I guess you are staying." Emma followed Claire to the office door. Her pulse was so loud she thought it might echo off the marble. Cassio Pisano was already inside, standing behind his desk like a storm contained in human form. He did not look up when she entered. He simply spoke in a calm, steady voice that somehow made her more nervous. "You are late again, Miss Hanford." "I arrived on time," Emma said quickly. "I just spent the last 7 minutes outside trying to convince myself not to faint." Cassio finally looked at her. His dark eyes swept over her with the precision of a scalpel. "You are an unusual woman, Miss Hanford. Most people would have resigned by email during the night." "I almost did. But here you are." "Here I am," she whispered, trying not to fidget. "I wanted to apologize again for the inkwell. I am willing to pay for it, in installments, small installments, maybe over 30 years. Cassio stepped closer. "It was not the inkwell that interested me yesterday, Miss Hanford. It was you." Emma blinked rapidly. "Me, personally, or me as in the catastrophic event I bring to every room?" "Both." Before she could decide whether to be offended or flattered, he turned and handed her a thick stack of documents. "Your first task. Organize these by date, client, and priority level. You have 10 minutes. The conference room is waiting." Emma stared at the stack. It was enormous. It looked like it contained the entire history of the company plus the tax records of a small European country. 10 minutes, she repeated weakly, to do all this. Cassio raised an eyebrow. If it were easy, Miss Hanford, anyone could do it. He walked away, leaving her standing there, clutching the documents like a drowning woman holding onto driftwood. She hurried to the small assistant desk outside his office, tripped over a plant, apologized to the plant, and got to work. Her fingers moved fast, her mind faster. She saw patterns others missed, saw inconsistencies, saw dates out of sequence, saw names that appeared too often or not enough. Her brain acted on instinct, connecting threads she did not consciously understand. By the time she walked into the conference room at exactly the 10-minute mark, Cassio looked up in surprise. She placed the organized stack on the table. "Summaries are attached," she said. "I flagged 3 for legal review." Cassio stared at her for a long moment. A strange, unreadable spark flickered in his eyes. "You should have been impossible to find, Miss Hanford," he said quietly. "Yet somehow you appeared." Emma felt the hairs on her arms rise. Appeared for what? Exactly what am I here for? Cassio did not answer. He simply said, "Sit, Miss Hanford. It is time you learned what you have walked into." Emma sat at the edge of her chair, feeling like she had stepped into a room she was never meant to see. The conference room was full of silent tension. The 3 department heads stared at her with open confusion. as if wondering how a clumsy newcomer had survived long enough to sit among them. Cassio stood at the head of the table, radiating a cold authority that made the air feel heavier. "This meeting is confidential," he said, and his voice held a warning. "Nothing said here leaves this room. Miss Hanford is here under my direction." That single statement made every person in the room sit up straighter. Emma felt the shift. They looked at her differently now, with something between suspicion and fear. She wished she could disappear into the chair. Cassio pressed a button, and a set of maps appeared on the screen. International shipping routes marked in bright red lines webbed across continents. Emma recognized the pattern immediately. The same pattern she had glimpsed yesterday in the documents he had given her. "We have an internal problem," Cassio said. "A breach that is costing us shipments. Someone is altering route codes and diverting containers mid-transit. Each change is small enough to evade immediate detection, but together they create a sizable loss." Emma frowned before she could stop herself. "The route changes are not random," she said softly. "Every diversion goes through only 3 specific ports. Someone is funneling everything toward one location, but making it look accidental." The entire table turned to stare at her. Cassio's gaze sharpened. "Explain," he ordered. Emma swallowed. "The shipping logs you gave me yesterday, they had repeated anomalies. It looked like nothing at first, but then I realized it was structured, like a hidden rhythm. Whoever is doing this knows exactly what they are doing, and they are using a pattern most people would overlook." One of the department heads scoffed. "She has been here for 1 day, and you want us to believe she found something our entire team missed for weeks." Cassio did not look away from her. "Show me," he said. Emma stood, her hands trembling slightly. She approached the screen and traced the red lines with her fingertips. Every route altered passed through the same triangular zone. It was subtle but intentional, a funnel disguised as chaos. Cassio's expression changed, hardened, darkened. "Someone in this company is working against us," he said, "and they are using my own system to do it." A heavy silence followed. Emma felt a storm building in him, one made of calculation, danger, and control. After the meeting ended, Cassio called her into his office again. As soon as the door closed, he faced her with an intensity that made her take a step back. "Where did you learn to see patterns like that?" he asked. Emma hesitated. "My degree was in art history, Renaissance trade networks, coded merchant ledgers, hidden symbols. I guess my brain sees structure where others see randomness." Cassio studied her for a moment that stretched too long. "Most people fear the complexity of this work," he said. "Yet you walk straight into it without flinching." "I am actually terrified right now," Emma admitted. "Good," he said. "Fear keeps you aware, and you will need awareness if you stay here." "Stay," she repeated. "You mean I still have the job?" For now, his eyes softened just barely. "But understand something, Miss Hanford. If you were anyone else, I would have dismissed you yesterday. Instead, you solved in hours what experts failed to solve in weeks. You are either incredibly gifted or incredibly dangerous." Emma felt her stomach twist. "Dangerous? Me? I trip over flat surfaces, I talk to myself, I break valuable objects. I am the opposite of dangerous." Cassio stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. "On the contrary, Miss Hanford, people who hide their intelligence behind chaos are the most dangerous of all, and someone in this building just became very afraid of you." A chill rippled through Emma's spine. Someone afraid of her, someone inside the company manipulating shipments, someone watching. Cassio looked toward the glass wall, scanning the floor beyond. "From now on," he said, "stay close to me. There are eyes on you that should not be there." Emma's pulse quickened. Eyes on her, a traitor inside, a pattern only she could see. The job she thought she desperately needed was becoming something else entirely. Something dark, something dangerous, something she did not yet understand. But she was already in the middle of it, and there was no turning back now. Emma walked into the office the next morning feeling like every shadow was watching her. The 60th floor had always been silent, but today the silence felt deliberate, like the entire staff was holding its breath. Conversations cut off when she passed. Footsteps paused. Doors clicked shut. She tried to convince herself she was imagining it, but the tension wrapped around her like invisible hands. When she reached her desk, she froze. Her computer screen was on even though she had turned it off last night. A single document was open. A shipping log she had worked on yesterday, except someone had highlighted a name she had not touched. A name she had never seen before. A port she knew for a fact was not on the original route. Porto San Mare. She whispered it under her breath. A small Italian port mostly used by fishing boats. Too small for major shipments. Too insignificant to handle multinational cargo. So why was it showing up in diverted routes? Her heart began to pound. Someone was inside her system. Someone had left this open intentionally. A message or a threat. Cassio's door opened behind her. She nearly jumped out of her skin. He stepped out holding a phone, his expression unreadable but intense. He looked at her screen, then at her face. "Show me," he said. Emma stepped aside, and Cassio leaned over the monitor, his eyes narrowing as he examined the highlighted route. "Someone accessed your terminal this morning," he said quietly. "Do you know who?" Of course she didn't. She had barely been here 48 hours. But Cassio's jaw clenched so tightly she thought the glass around them might crack. He picked up her keyboard and typed rapidly, pulling up access logs. Someone had cleared most of them. Someone knew what they were doing. But one tiny fragment remained. A time stamp. 5 minutes before she arrived. He stared at it long enough to confirm whatever fear was forming in his mind. Then he turned to her with a voice that was too calm to be safe. "Miss Hanford, you are not to be alone on this floor again. Not for a second." Emma blinked. "Is that really necessary?" "Someone entered your workstation to send a message. That is not curiosity. That is surveillance." She felt a cold rush crawl across her spine. Surveillance. Someone watching, someone marking her. Cassio moved closer, lowering his voice. "Porto San Mare is a shell port used for laundering piracy shipments. Whoever highlighted it wanted you to see it, wanted to know if you would understand." "I don't understand," Emma whispered. "But you can," he said. "Your mind sees patterns no one else can see. That makes you valuable and dangerous. And now someone is testing you." Before she could respond, the office lights flickered. Just once, a brief pulse, but Cassio stiffened immediately. That wasn't a power glitch, that was a signal. He grabbed her wrist. "Stay behind me, don't argue." He pulled her down the hallway toward the private archive room. Emma stumbled, struggling to keep up. She didn't understand what was happening, but Cassio did. His steps were precise, his breathing steady, his eyes sharp. He opened the archive door, ushered her inside, and locked it. The room was lined with shelves stacked with ledger's artifacts and stacks of coded documents. A strange cold washed through her. "What's going on?" she asked breathlessly. Cassio listened at the door, his body tense. His voice, when he spoke, was low and certain. "Someone is in this building who should not be." Emma felt her mouth go dry. A break-in, a traitor, a message left on her computer, and now someone moving through the floor. Cassio turned to her, his eyes dark and focused. "If they find us here, they will not care who you are. They will only care what you know." Emma's heart pounded so hard she felt it in her throat. "What do I know?" she whispered. Cassio stepped closer until she could feel the heat of him. "More than you realize," he said, "and more than they want you to." The lights flickered again. Footsteps echoed outside the door. Whoever was out there was coming straight toward them. The footsteps outside the archive room grew louder, moving with slow, deliberate purpose, as if the person already knew exactly where Cassio and Emma were hiding. Emma pressed herself against a shelf, trying to steady her breathing, while Cassio stood perfectly still, listening to every sound with the focus of a predator. The faint metallic click of a safety being switched off echoed through the corridor. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Cassio leaned close, his voice barely a breath. "If they breach the door, stay behind me and move only when I say. Do not run. They expect panic. Panic gets you killed." Emma nodded even though her legs trembled. Her hands gripped the edge of a crate filled with old ledgers, fingernails digging into the wood. She had never been in danger before, not like this, not real danger. But Cassio's calm steadiness anchored her. The doorknob shook, then stopped. Silence pressed in heavy and suffocating. Cassio's hand slid to the inside of his jacket, where she realized he kept a weapon hidden even in the office. He did not draw it yet, but he was ready. Then a new sound broke through the stillness. A soft 3-tap rhythm on the door. Cassio exhaled sharply. That's a code, not a threat. He unlocked the door in one swift movement and pulled it open, revealing Marco Cassio's longtime security chief. His shirt was torn, temple bleeding, and he was breathing hard. "We have a breach," Marco said. "4th floor. Armed, they cut the cameras, they're moving up." Emma's stomach twisted. "They're coming here." Marco nodded. Whoever it is knows the building layout too well. Someone fed them inside information. Cassio's jaw tightened. A traitor on the inside. Marco's eyes flicked to Emma. "She okay?" "For now," Cassio said. "We're moving." He grabbed Emma's hand, not gently, but with the kind of grip meant to keep her alive. They followed Marco through a back corridor that Emma didn't even know existed. The walls were narrow and unmarked, made for emergencies or escapes rather than everyday use. Marco whispered intel as they moved. 2 intruders, maybe 3, professional, quiet. They bypassed main access points. This wasn't random. They're looking for something specific. Emma felt her throat tighten. "Are they looking for me?" Cassio didn't slow down. "They accessed your workstation, highlighted a route you identified. They want to know how much you can see, and they want to send a warning." Emma's pulse pounded. A warning for what? Cassio did not answer, but his silence was louder than words. They reached a service elevator hidden behind a maintenance panel. Marco pried it open and waved them in. Cassio kept Emma in front of him, his hand steady between her shoulder blades, guiding her with measured control. As the elevator descended, Emma finally found her voice. "Cassio, this is insane. I'm an assistant. I'm clumsy. I break things. I talk too much. Why would anyone target me?" Cassio turned her gently to face him, lowering his voice so even Marco couldn't hear. "You see patterns no one else sees. You found a leak experts missed for months. Someone inside my company has been working with outside operatives, and your discovery threatens them. That makes you a liability." "I don't want to be a liability," Emma whispered. "You're not a liability," Cassio said. "You're the first person in years who sees things clearly." The elevator stopped in the basement level where the lighting was dim and the air colder. Marco stepped out and checked the corridor. "Clear for now, but we don't have long. They're sweeping downwards." Cassio touched Emma's cheek lightly, an unexpected gesture in the midst of the chaos. "You walked into my life by accident," he said. "But you're here for a reason. You're part of this now, whether you want to be or not." Emma swallowed hard. Her hands shook, but her voice steadied. "Then tell me what this really is, Cassio. All of it. No more half answers." Cassio's gaze held hers, dark and determined. His breath lingered warm against her skin. "It's time you know the truth," he said. "The whole truth, starting with the man who betrayed me years ago and why he is hunting us now." Footsteps thundered somewhere above them. They were out of time. The basement corridor felt too narrow, too dim, too cold as Emma followed Cassio and Marco deeper into the hidden levels of the building. The air smelled like metal and dust, and something older, something that had been buried under the surface of Pisano Global for years. Emma's footsteps echoed behind them, uneven and anxious. Cassio walked ahead of her with controlled power, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't ordinary danger. This was personal. They reached a reinforced door at the end of the hall. Marco unlocked it with a key Emma was certain normal employees never knew existed. The door opened into a secret operations room lined with screens, maps, and encrypted files. It was nothing like the corporate floors above. This was a war room, a hidden part of Cassio's life no one was meant to see. Emma stepped inside and felt the world tilt. Cassio closed the door behind them, sealing the 3 of them away from whatever danger climbed the floors above. "I promised you the truth," he said. "You deserve to know exactly what you stepped into." Emma nodded, even though fear curled tightly in her stomach. She stood in front of him, trying to hold herself steady. Cassio's expression shifted from controlled to something rawer, something he never showed anyone. 3 years ago, I trusted someone with everything. His name was Luca. He was my second in command, my closest advisor, my brother in everything but blood. Emma felt a cold shiver run through her. Luca, the name from the altered logs, the highlighted roots, the impossible pattern. What happened, she asked quietly. He betrayed me, Cassio said, not out of greed, not out of fear, out of ambition. He wanted the organization, the influence, the power the board gave me because I was my father's heir. Luca despised that. Emma listened, every piece clicking into place, like a puzzle she had not known she was solving. He leaked roots to outside factions and funneled profits through ports like the one you uncovered. I confronted him. He disappeared, until now. Marco cut in, voice tight. He didn't just disappear. He vanished with people's help, people inside these walls. Emma felt her pulse pound. So the breach today, the intruders, the message on her computer. Cassio nodded. All him, testing you, provoking me, sending a clear message. What message? Cassio met her eyes. That he is coming back for everything he lost, including revenge. Emma's breath caught. Revenge on you. Cassio stepped closer, his voice quieter. Revenge on anyone connected to me. That includes you now. Emma felt her throat tighten. Fear should have made her step back, but she didn't move. Why me, she whispered. I'm nobody. I'm clumsy. I break everything I touch. I'm not a threat. Cassio reached out and lifted her chin, gently forcing her to meet his eyes. You saw something no one else could see. You exposed a pattern built to stay hidden. That makes you the most dangerous person in this building, and Luca knows it. Before Emma could respond, Marco's comm crackled with static, then a voice sharp and panicked. They're on the basement level. 2 hostiles confirmed, moving fast. Cassio reacted instantly. He grabbed Emma's hand, pulling her behind one of the consoles. Marco sealed the steel door, but the sound of heavy footsteps echoed on the other side like a countdown. Emma's heart hammered as she crouched behind Cassio. Her breath came in sharp, frightened bursts. Cassio looked back at her, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Fear not for himself, but for her. Stay low, he whispered. No matter what happens, stay behind me. The lights flickered again, plunging the room into brief darkness. Then a voice called from the other side of the door, smooth, mocking, familiar. Capo, I hear you found yourself a clever little assistant. Emma's blood froze. Luca. Cassio's grip tightened on her hand. He found us, Emma whispered. No, Cassio murmured. He found you. The door handle began to turn. The steel door shook under the force of the first blow. Emma flinched so hard she hit her shoulder against the console behind her. The second blow rattled the frame. The third made dust fall from the ceiling. Luca wasn't trying to sneak in anymore. He wanted Cassio to hear him coming. He wanted Emma to hear him too. Cassio motioned for Marco to hold position and then leaned close to Emma. His breath brushed her cheek, warm, steady, unshaken. Listen to me, Miss Hanford. Whatever happens, you stay low and do not move until I tell you. I mean it. Emma nodded, but fear tightened her chest until she could barely breathe. She had never heard her own heartbeat this loudly. It pounded like a warning bell inside her ribs. The door buckled under another violent strike. A thin crack opened down the middle, and a hand wrapped in black tactical gloves curled around the edge, prying it outward. Through the widening gap, Emma saw a silhouette tall and imposing, backlit by the harsh red emergency lights flashing in the hallway. Luca stepped inside the room with a calmness that made Emma's skin crawl. He looked nothing like the charming intelligence officer she had met during her first interview. This Luca was colder, leaner, carved by anger and ambition. He smiled when he saw Cassio. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a man who believed the game was already won. You always did choose the worst hiding spots, Capo, he said, his voice smooth and unhurried. And you brought the girl. How thoughtful. Saves me the trouble of fetching her. Emma felt Cassio shift in front of her, partly blocking Luca's view of her. But Luca already knew exactly where she was. His gaze slid past Cassio and fixed on her crouched form with unsettling interest. Emma Hanford, Luca said, as if tasting her name. The unexpected variable. The clumsy one. The girl who broke a priceless inkwell and then exposed a 6-month operation in a single afternoon. I should congratulate you. Emma's throat tightened. The compliment sounded like a threat stitched in silk. What do you want, Luca? Cassio said, his voice quiet, but deadly. Luca stepped fully into the room, boots crunching on scattered debris. What I am owed. Everything your father denied me. Everything you claimed the moment you were born. And her. Cassio stiffened. Emma felt his muscles tense like steel. She has nothing to do with this, Cassio said. Luca chuckled. Oh, she has everything to do with this. The moment you let her touch your files, the moment her little mind saw what she shouldn't, she became a loose thread. And loose threads unravel empires. Marco edged slightly to the side, angling for a clean shot. Luca noticed. He shook his head mockingly. Marco, dear old friend, do not make this unpleasant. We all know how that ends. Emma's stomach twisted when she realized Marco's hand trembled ever so slightly. Luca's betrayal had wounded more than Cassio. It had fractured an entire family. Cassio stepped forward, blocking Luca's path. You want me, Luca? Leave her out of this. Luca's smile widened. Oh no, Capo. You do not get to dictate terms. Not anymore. You burned bridges, washed money, erased evidence, and thought no one would ever match you. But here she is, your little secretary, pulling apart the threads like a child unraveling a tapestry. Emma swallowed hard, forcing her voice out. If you want to threaten me, fine. But why go after Cassio's company? Why the shipments? What are you moving through Porto San Mare? Luca's attention snapped to her like she had just stepped into the center of the board. His eyes gleamed with amusement. Clever girl. Ask the right question at the wrong time, and you may not like the answer. He lifted a small device from his pocket. A detonator. Emma's blood ran cold. Porto San Mare was never about shipments, he said softly. It was about leverage, a pressure point, and now I have another one. Cassio moved so fast Emma barely saw it. 1 second he was still, the next he lunged forward, grabbing Luca's wrist, forcing the detonator upward. They crashed into a shelf, sending ledgers and old relics tumbling to the floor. Marco fired. Luca twisted. The bullet struck the metal frame and ricocheted. Emma gasped as sparks flew inches from her face. Cassio wrestled Luca to the ground, their movements brutal and desperate. Luca shoved him off with surprising strength, then rolled to his knees, aiming the detonator toward the ceiling. You cannot protect her forever, Luca hissed. And the moment she steps out of your shadow, she dies. Emma's instincts roared to life. Fear became fire. She grabbed the heaviest object near her, a thick bound ledger, and hurled it with every ounce of strength she had. It hit Luca square in the side of the head. He staggered. The detonator slipped from his grip. Cassio seized the opening, tackled him again, and this time pinned him to the floor with a force that rattled the entire room. But Luca started laughing, low, cold, certain. This is only the beginning, he whispered. Emma's heart hammered as she stared at him, pinned and smiling. She realized then there were deeper secrets, hidden wars, shadows beneath the shadows. And Luca was not the only enemy. The sirens reached them, faint at first, then growing louder as Marco radioed upstairs for an emergency lockdown. Luca knelt on the floor, hands cuffed behind him, blood trickling from where the ledger hit him, yet he still smiled, that unsettling, calm smile that made Emma's skin crawl. Cassio stood over him, chest heaving, jaw clenched, eyes burning with a fury he had held inside for years. But Emma could see something else too, something colder, something haunted. Marco secured Luca and dragged him to the far wall while Cassio turned to Emma. For the first time since she met him, he looked shaken, not because of danger, but because of her. She threw a ledger at a man who had a detonator. Emma Hanford, he said quietly, as if he still could not believe it. Are you out of your mind? Probably, she whispered, because her entire body was shaking so hard her knees almost gave out. Cassio caught her by the waist, steadying her before she collapsed. The warmth of his hand pressed through her shirt, grounding her in a way she had not known she needed. You could have been killed, he said. So could you, she shot back. The intensity in his eyes softened in a way that made her chest tighten. His thumb brushed a stray strand of hair off her cheek, and for the first time she saw fear in him, real fear for her. "You do not understand," he said quietly. "You were not supposed to be part of this. You were supposed to be safe." "But I am here," she whispered, and the truth in her voice surprised even herself. Marco returned, stepping between them. "We need to move Luca before the police reach this level. And we need to get Emma out. If he has backup, they might still be in the building." Luca let out a soft laugh. "Backup? You think so small, Marco. What is coming is bigger than any of you. This building, this city. This little empire Cassio thinks he controls. It all collapses soon." Emma's stomach twisted. Cassio crouched in front of Luca, gripping his jaw, forcing him to look up. "Who is helping you? Who else is involved?" Luca only smiled. "Ask your father's old partners, Capo. You think betrayal began with me. You think your family history is clean. There are names buried in the shadows, and when they surface, the girl will be the first casualty." Cassio's hand tightened so sharply Emma stepped forward instinctively. "Enough," she said. "Tell us what you want. What is the point of all this?" Luca's eyes flicked to her. "You, but not for the reasons you think." She felt her breath catch. Cassio snapped. "Do not speak to her. You lost the right to speak her name." Marco hauled Luca to his feet and forced him toward a secured holding room. As soon as the door slammed shut, Cassio turned back to Emma, pulling her into a private corner of the room away from the flickering lights and the echoes of Luca's laughter. "Emma, I need to know something," he said, voice low and strained. "Are you scared of me?" She held his gaze. She had seen the violence in him, the coldness, the shadow of the man he could be. But she had also seen the way he shielded her, stood in front of her, risked everything for her. "I am scared of everything happening," she admitted. "I am scared of Luca. I am scared of whoever is coming next. But you, Cassio, I am not scared of you, not even a little." He exhaled like he had been holding that breath for years. His forehead rested against hers, grounding both of them. "You do not understand how dangerous it is for you to trust me," he whispered. "Then teach me," she said. "Tell me the truth, all of it." He lifted his head, eyes dark and tense, full of something deeper than fear or guilt. "You want the truth, Emma. Then you need to know my father died because of this war, and the people who came for him are coming back. They used Luca as a pawn, and now they want you because you saw what they did not want anyone to see." Her heart pounded. "Why me?" "Because you are the threat they never predicted," he said. "And the one thing they fear more than me is someone who can see through them." The room vibrated as another explosion rattled the basement level. Dust fell from the ceiling. Marco shouted from the hallway that another breach had been detected. Cassio cupped Emma's face, his voice low, steady, unbreakable. "Stay with me. No matter what comes through those doors, no matter who arrives next, you stay with me." She nodded, breathless. Because whatever storm was coming next, Emma knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was already in the center of it, and she was not letting Cassio face it alone. Alarms blared through the basement as another tremor shook the floor, this one strong enough to make dust rain from the ceiling and rattle the shelves around them. Emma clutched Cassio's arm as Marco sprinted back into the room, his normally calm expression tight with urgency. "We have a second breach on the east side," he said. "Not Luca's people, someone else." Cassio's eyes hardened. The word "someone else" chilled Emma far more than the alarms. Luca had been terrifying enough, a ghost from Cassio's past who knew their weaknesses. But the idea of another group, another enemy, was a heavier, colder threat. Marco pulled up camera feeds on the wall. 3 figures moved through the security hall, dressed in black tactical gear, faces hidden behind masks. They moved faster than Luca's men, with a precision Emma recognized instantly. These were professionals of a different level. "Who are they?" Emma whispered. Cassio stared at the screen without blinking. "My father's enemies," he said. "The ones Luca warned about. They should have been gone. They should have been dead. But they are back, and they are not here for files. They are here for us." Emma felt her heartbeat climb into her throat. "Why us? Why now?" Cassio turned to her, and his answer was softer than she expected. "Because you saw something you were never meant to see, and because I refuse to lose someone else." The emergency lights flickered again, turning the room into a pulse of blood-red shadows. Marco checked the door. We cannot hold this room. Not with 3 and possibly more coming. We need to move to the sublevel exit. Cassio nodded once, then crossed to Emma, gripping her shoulders. Stay close to me. No wandering. No questions. If I tell you to run, you run. She breathed out a trembling okay. They slipped into the hidden service corridor behind the operations room. It was narrow, cold, and unfinished concrete with low ceiling lights that flickered weakly. Emma stayed between Cassio and Marco, her fear sharpening with every step. Ahead, the floor rumbled again. Marco froze, holding up a hand. Voices echoed faintly. Not English, not Italian, not anything Emma recognized. A coded language spoken seamlessly between the masked figures. They're already in the sublevel, Marco whispered. Cassio's jaw flexed. They cut off our escape. The corridor split into 2 paths, a left turn leading to the generator room and a right turn toward the freight elevator. Cassio looked between them, calculating silently. He motioned right. But as they reached the junction, a shadow stepped into view from the opposite corridor, wearing the same black gear as the intruders. Emma gasped. Marco aimed instantly. The figure raised their hands slowly. Wait, the stranger said. It's me. He pulled off his mask, revealing a familiar face. Alessandro Pisano. Cassio's uncle, long believed dead, long rumored to be the most ruthless strategist the family ever produced. Emma's breath caught. Cassio stared unmoving. You're supposed to be dead. Alessandro smiled faintly. So are you if you stay here. They are here for the girl, not you, not Luca, her. Emma stepped back, hitting the wall behind her. Why me? Because you are the key to the ledger your father began decoding years ago, Alessandro said. The same ledger that exposed the names that were never supposed to be spoken again. These men are here to erase you before you connect the final pattern. Emma's knees weakened. Cassio's hand pressed to her back, keeping her steady. You knew my father, Emma whispered. How? Why did he die? Alessandro's smile faded. Your father died because he discovered the same truth you just uncovered. And these men will not stop until the last witness is gone. Another explosion rocked the corridor, and the lights went dark, plunging them into shadows. Cassio pushed Emma behind him, his voice steady even in the pitch black. Alessandro, you better be on our side. Because if you're not, I will kill you myself. Alessandro's voice emerged through the darkness. Whether you trust me or not, you have 2 minutes before they reach this hall. Emma felt Cassio grip her hand, and she understood with terrifying clarity. This wasn't about codes or roots or Luca anymore. This was about history. Bloodlines. Secrets older than Cassio. Secrets her father died for. And now they were hunting her. The corridor shook again as another explosion echoed through the sublevel. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the emergency lights flickered weakly like they were scared too. Emma clung to Cassio's hand as Alessandro led them deeper into the darkness. Every step felt like a countdown, every sound like a warning. They entered a narrow stairwell that spiraled downward into the old foundations of the building. The air was colder here, older like it remembered things no one should remember. Alessandro moved fast but spoke quietly as they descended. Emma, your father did not stumble onto the ledger by accident. Someone sent it to him. Someone inside the old families who wanted the truth exposed but could not risk revealing themselves. Your father was chosen because he had the mind to understand it and the courage to publish it. Emma's breath caught. He never even knew what he was in the middle of. He knew enough, Alessandro replied, and that was why he died. But he never finished the work. You did. They reached the bottom of the stairwell, but the hallway was filled with smoke drifting in thick waves. Shadows moved inside the haze like hunters. Marco drew his weapon. They found us, he whispered. Cassio stepped in front of Emma, shielding her with his entire body. Stay behind me no matter what. I mean it. Emma squeezed his hand harder. I'm not leaving you. Figures emerged from the smoke. 3, 5, 7. Their movements were impossibly precise, like a single organism learning, adjusting, hunting. Alessandro stepped forward, raising his hands. Enough. She is under my protection. The masked figures paused only for a second, then one stepped ahead. His voice was cold like glass-cutting skin. You have no authority here, Alessandro. You are dead to the council, and dead men cannot claim protection. Cassio stiffened beside her. Council. He had never spoken that word before. Emma felt a terrible realization rising inside her. There is something bigger than the families, isn't there, she whispered. Something older. Alessandro nodded once. The council built the empire long before your father or mine were ever born. They operate in shadows, manipulating trade, politics, security, global influence. You exposed their coded roots. You uncovered their ledger. That makes you a threat they cannot ignore. Emma felt her legs tremble, but she did not step back. She stood straighter. So they want to kill me because I solved a pattern. Because you saw the truth, Alessandro replied. The masked leader stepped forward, gun raised toward Emma. The council demands silence, and silence will be restored. Cassio moved faster than she had ever seen. He shoved Emma behind a pillar and fired at the same moment Marco opened fire from the opposite angle. Alessandro lunged at the closest attacker, and chaos erupted louder than the alarms screaming through the building. Gunfire flashed through the smoke, lighting up the corridor in violent white bursts. Emma crouched behind the pillar, her heart pounding wildly. She saw Cassio fighting with brutal precision, every movement driven by something deeper than survival, something protective, fierce, and desperate. Emma looked around her, searching for anything she could use. Her gaze fell on a rusted metal valve jutting from the wall, connected to an old pressure pipe, the kind that might still be active. She crawled toward it, hands shaking. Emma, what are you doing? Cassio shouted without turning his head. She didn't answer. She gripped the valve with both hands and twisted. It didn't move. She gritted her teeth, twisted harder. It gave a rusty scream, and then the pipe exploded, sending a blast of boiling steam across the corridor. The masked attackers staggered, blinded by the sudden whiteout. Cassio surged forward, using the steam as cover. One by one, the figures fell, either from Marco's shots or Alessandro's strikes, until the hallway fell silent except for the hiss of steam. Emma slumped against the wall, panting. Cassio rushed to her, pulling her into his arms. You cannot keep doing this, he said, voice shaking. You will give me a heart attack. I saved us again, she whispered weakly. Yes, and you are never allowed near pipes again, ever. Marco exhaled in relief, checking the bodies. All down, no movement. Alessandro leaned against the wall, watching Emma with something like respect. The council will come again, he warned. This was only the first wave. They will not stop until their secrets die with you. Cassio tightened his hold on her. Then we disappear. We go dark. We rebuild somewhere no one can touch us. Together. Emma lifted her head, and the ledger, and the truth. We expose it, he said. We burn their empire instead of letting it burn us. Alessandro nodded. Your father would have chosen the same. They made it out of the building through a service tunnel, emerging into the early morning light. Sirens wailed far behind them, but the sky was turning gold, as if the world was waking clean and new. Cassio took Emma's face in his hands. This is the end of the old life. Everything changes now. Emma leaned into him, exhausted but unbroken. Then let it change. I am not afraid anymore. He kissed her, slow, deep, certain, because I'm with you. And as the sun rose behind them, Emma realized the final truth of this impossible story. She hadn't just survived the Mafia boss. She had changed him. She hadn't just broken his office. She had broken the dynasty, built on shadows and silence. And together, they were about to build a future.